Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, January 15th, and this is your end of day video. So first things first, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going over is for information purposes only, not giving out any investment advice or anything like that. So Wednesday through middle of the week done. Trade deal signed, so one less thing that you kind of like have to worry about with the headlines. I'll talk about that in just a second. Some other things, I think 15th of the month, which we talked about pre-market, you could see some new money be put to work. Sometimes on the 15th of the month, the first of the month. So I think we saw a little bit of that. More rotation going on in the market. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then, of course, I'll talk about what I traded and some other observations for the market. But yeah, first things first, trade deal out of the way. I don't know what people were really expecting. I got a lot of questions about that, which is fine, rightfully so. I even got a couple of reporters asking me questions about, hey, how are you trading the trade deal signing? And basically, I said I'm not. There's nothing really to do. I of course like they released some things that were a little bit new. Some headlines came out like Visa, Mastercard, AXP are going to be payment processors for China. But I as I kind of came into the week, I just didn't think there was going to be that much. They've already made all the agreements and so forth. They had a little ceremony today. For as many questions as I got on this thing, I really think that that is more serious to watch is going to be once earnings season heats up. Right? We have the banks this week. The banks are usually not big movers, which they weren't. So far. There's still a couple more to report, but that's typical every quarter is that the banks are not really market moving. What's going to be market moving, I think, is big tech when it reports. We got one name that'll be interesting tonight. That's Taiwan Semiconductor, one of the semis. But I think it's really going to be, the big heavy hitters, right, that come out, and especially when we have those days where you get 20 or 30 companies in the S&P 500 that report. Those are going to be the days that are interesting. Now, of course, scenarios, right? I know, we're seeing this market go higher and higher on a daily basis. By the way, nice move here in XPO that announced that they're putting themselves up for sale. After the close, they announced that. But I think at this point, right? And again, I'm going on a with my gut here, but I'm thinking my personal thought is of this market swing that we've seen without like a down 1% move. We're probably in the eighth or ninth inning of this one particular move, right? I've talked about this before. I've talked about how we've had similar swings. I mean, this one was a really long one. This went on, for quite some time. I just think that we're at some point due for a little bit of at least digestion, right? So I'm kind of thinking that earnings could be an excuse for that. But let's talk about this at the end of the day. I think everybody's looking for something to say, okay, can I go in and short this or can I do that? One of the things that could happen for the next couple weeks, which is sometimes what we get during earnings season, is the market just it chops around, right? Because typically what happens, and again, I don't know what's going to happen next week and the week after, but typically what happens is some names beat, some names miss. And if you have that combination, then the market just the S&P 500 just goes chops around and is close to flat. So that could take place. So make sure, like, I know some people are thinking, oh, well, we could go higher or we could go lower. We could reverse and go lower. One thing that could happen is we just chop around for a little bit and we continue to see sector rotations. So that is why, I think you just kind of want to see what kind of action that you get on the tape. Option activity will give us that sense of whether they're buying a lot of puts or whether they're not and still buying calls, right? Today option activity tapered off. It was not as crazy as it's been earlier in the week. I don't have a reason for that. Maybe people were watching the TV. I don't know. Watching the trade ceremony go on. But things did quiet down a little bit. There wasn't that much put buying either. There was a couple things that I thought were notable on the put side. So I'll talk a little bit about that. One thing I did notice was, again, the small caps outperformed. Day number 2, I think it is. They did just barely close. I made we talked about this in yesterday's video, how we did not close above value. We almost didn't do it again. It was basically, it's funny how these things, just a little bit of maybe a buy program at the end of the day, got us to basically finished up a 0.5% in IWM. I was in a rut trade. I got out of it for profits. I was looking for big profits in the trade. I just got out for small profits because I didn't like this price action at the end of the day, and I got out of it like right in here. So again, maybe I was getting a little bit greedy. I'm trying to get the full $10 on a call spread, but and then of course like the market bounced back. So we've seen this. We got this herky jerky price action yesterday too. So it all depends on what your conviction is right now to kind of stay in some trades. I'll talk about that in a second too. All right, so I wanted to make sure to talk about sectors, some really interesting movers. Again, the pot stocks. I'll talk just really quick. I know they're an absolute in fuego the last couple days. We outlined a couple areas that I thought the pot stocks could get to. I did this in yesterday's. Whoops, I keep going the wrong. At the end of the day, and I also put these charts. I talked a little bit about it pre-market. Where's my weekly chart? There we go. I think 2070 is an area that you could see this move back up into. That's your resistance on the weekly chart. That's major resistance. Again, this is the ETF, so it has CGC and Kronos and all that stuff in there, which is close to this second Venom. So 1987, that could be an area that you look at. But certainly, we're seeing all types of names with short interest get squeezed. Some of that could be the January effect. Some of it, I've kind of come up with some theories on it. Shack did not close on the highs, but gapped up on a Goldman report. They were actually at a conference yesterday too. Tupperware is like another one. That I mean, if I've said it a bunch of times, like if you are really good like scalping, but it is what it is. For a quick trade, you could catch this momentum. Do you want to? You have to ask yourself like what size trade you want to do it and so forth. But it's Tupperware, so that's not really where I like to set up camp for an investment. Again, if you could catch something for a day trade on something like this while it's got momentum, congratulations to you. But this is the stuff that's moving right now. That's this thing was up 13%. The pot stocks again, that MJ ETF was up 5.4%. Even it didn't close on the highs. So this was day 3. Maybe you get one more day with that stuff. So what else? Let's move on from that. Home builders, right? So I was doing my homework last night, going through, and look at the move in home builders. So you could see this on my Twitter feed from last night, right? I talked about some of the home builders, right? If you go through, and if you look at some of the charts that I tweeted out last night, I did put one of these trades on. Where was last night? Jeez, I have tweeted a lot of stuff out. But yeah, I talked about XHB, right, breaking out. TPH was the one that I traded. Really, really coiled. Right, and I think I tweeted out ITB the night before. But you got a breakout in home builders. What's funny about this, I forget if I went over this in last night's video, the home builders. I think I did. But I had a January trade on. There's always, I try to give you a couple lessons in every video from my own experience. I had January calls on here in the ITB ETF. I kind of just ran out of time. If I would have given it another month, right? So sometimes give your trades a little bit more time. I forget the reason why I was in January calls. I think I was in them for about 3 weeks. And we just didn't get anything, right? We didn't get this move. I did talk about this in last night's video, but now we got the breakout higher. So I went long TPH today. This is TriPoint. Look at the coiling going on here, right? So we got a break above value, and it's a $16 stock. So I think this thing can get up to 1687, right, which would be a nice level to get to. If you need leverage, you could do it too, but I think just trading stock is fine. So that was my play of the day. So nice move out of there. So again, there's some other things besides the high short interest names that are moving. And then you kind of had some defensive sectors in here. Healthcare, which has also been strong. I've been talking about biotech the last couple days. You got some continuation with that. Let's see, IBB. Oh, geez, IBB did not break out. Stopped right at the top of value. XLV, a bunch of healthcare names were strong. Look at the XLV coming out to new highs as well. So that's healthcare. Also, this was being helped by UNH. So the whole healthcare, that's IHF is a healthcare providers ETF, but that provided a little bit of catalyst. I had a small earnings trade on for UNH that worked well. I'm out of that trade for profits. That is here. Earnings info. Right here, I got out of that for right around a double. January 290, 295 call spread. Where'd this thing close? Wow, maybe I could have gotten more for it. But sometimes a double's nice for earnings. Other sectors that I thought were notable for the day. Utilities, right? Utilities are breaking out as well. Look at this. I mean, that's not a bad, like, cover up the symbol. I know growth traders are like, I'm not going to look at utilities. Yeah, well, look at the options are so cheap on XLU, it's ridiculous. And if they're going to move like this, you can make money, right? So XLU, very, very nice looking breakout. And that's been digesting for the last, since October, right? When other risk assets have gotten going. Remember this ETF, USMV? Look at this thing, also breaking out to new highs. That's minimum volatility equities. What didn't perform well today? Semiconductors. Interesting. They're taking a break. I talked about this about a few weeks ago. Right. This is software over. Let me just add the RSI in here. I talked about how there was a positive or a bullish divergence. So again, what is this chart? We've got the software ETF in the numerator. In the denominator, you've got the semiconductors. Notice how over the last year, semiconductors have really been outperforming, right? Because you got IGV in the numerator. But notice here, right? This ratio made a new low, but the RSI did not. Right, so new low here, and notice since then, again, we're just talking about basically the last couple weeks. Software names have been outperforming the semiconductors. Again, it's an interesting relationship to watch. If you back this up over the last 3 years, right, this is where during the trade war, software outperformed, and then all of a sudden, the semiconductors over the last year. But you got this nice little rally off the lows, and again, bullish divergence. I talked about this about a week ago when it occurred. So semis, are kind of taking a back seat for now. Note Taiwan Semiconductor reports tomorrow, so maybe that will change. The other, another one that I've been looking at is IWM over Qs. Slight outperformance there for the last couple days. Right, it's a ratio that I've been talking about, which is here. So you could see, look at this, I think the Qs really got ahead of themselves in terms of versus other stocks. So you could see that play out a bit. And I'm out of order. A few other things. All right, so that's your semi underperformance for the day. I wanted to talk also about how you're managing your trades. Right? A lot of people, I see this a lot on Twitter. especially like some of these moves that are happening, like in the momentum names that we already discussed. If you get out of a name and you're like, wow, I just made like a double, out of options, and then a half hour later you see the stock up more, and you're like, oh geez, I left a decent amount of money on the table. Make sure that you're thinking about the context of the trade, and if you still like the trade, keep it on. And how to do that, like to manage it. I tweeted this out earlier, but I'll explain just for a minute because it's a really good concept. I've been giving people a lot of, or trying to at least, some recognition on rolling their trades. So, for example, if you're in like a February trade, and I don't know, like there was a nice example of this. One of the traders was trading VRTX, which is a pretty volatile biotech name. But let's say you got in here, right, and you got into like the 230 calls, right, and they went. I don't have the. Let me just bring this option chain up so I can give you a nice example. Right, so if you got into February 230 calls, right, and you got in them for like $5, right, and they go up to $10, right, you could take that trade off, and you could think like, oh geez, I got pretty lucky with this, I want to catch a double. You know how quickly, right, if you've been trading options for a while, you know how volatile they are. So what you could do is take that trade off, take the February 230s off, and then go into the 240s, right? So this way it's called rolling out. So you're by default, like if you had five contracts and you sold them, let's say from $5 to $10, and now you take that money and you go into the 240 calls. This is a little bit of a bad example because there's only $10 wide strike. But if you only buy five contracts of the 240 calls, you're basically you're playing with your profits. Or you could just buy less. You could buy three calls, right? And you still have exposure in the name, but you're locking up those profits, right? So you don't have to worry about an option price that's at $10. That went from $5 to $10. Take it off and go into something that's a lesser dollar amount, and you could only lose that option price, right? Even if it goes to zero. It's very important, right? Like in trading, you want to have how you become profitable over time is to have small losers and big winners, right? That's easier said than done, but that's one way to manage your winners and stay in a trade if you're trading options. If you're trading stock, it's a whole nother ball game. You basically can just ride the trend, which I've been doing in many trades. So that's it's a very important concept, and it's one that I see only like a small fraction of option traders do. And then I see a lot of after the fact, like on Twitter. Oh, geez, look at this stock now. So continue if you like it and you think it's going to continue to trend. There are much better things to do than just taking the trade off and saying, okay, that's it, right? And I've done that now with PayPal a few times, and I was able to take in the morning a target on the roll of the PayPal calls. But stick with it in some names. You don't have to find the next idea all the time. You could stick with a name that's trending, like Apple and so forth and so forth and so on. All right, so I think that's a good example. I wanted to talk about a few other stocks. Tesla, we talked about how I took this trade off yesterday. I'm going to try to send out the video that I had from last week breaking it down, why I thought 545, 547 was a good level. But you could see this lined up very well. Now, Tesla hasn't lost. Another important concept, some people looking to short Tesla today. Notice it has not lost the 5-day moving average. So that does look like a reversal bar. It looks like a hanging man. This looks like also reversal bar, or obviously a red bar. But it has not lost the 5-period moving average. So to me, that's not necessarily a sell signal. You can use that as a sell signal, but I like to watch this 5-period moving average because sometimes candlestick charting can give you some false signals. So we'll see if Tesla comes in a little further. It is still overbought, but I thought this was a great place to take targets. So thank you, Market Webs, doing a wonderful job of telling us where to do that. So I will try to find that video for you, or render. It was a part of a webinar that we did last week, but I will try to like condense it, which I don't know how to do. I'll figure it out. But that's that. And then just a couple other things. Apple, which has also been on a nice run. Also looks like it's starting to kind of come in a little bit. Watch a very easy level for you guys if you trade Apple every day. Watch this 309.82. It's still holding. Looks like there's a fat finger that happened in this trade, which it looks like they're going to let stand so far anyway. Option activity. Again, a lot of momentum names. ON Semiconductor. I'm not. Somebody asked me about. What do you think they're doing, or what do I think about ON Semiconductor? It's interesting, but for some reason they keep coming into this. I don't know if it's a play on earnings, which we're going to see more and more option flow is going to get noisier and noisier, or they like something in ON, before that, and they could also be playing another name for earnings. All right, so that's that. As always, I show you my trades. I'll tell you also a lesson, for today. Here's the PayPal exit, TPH, and then I added to TPH later in the day. Did some scalping. I got out of Bristol Myers, the first target in CME, and then I started dumping some trades a little bit. Right, I put on a small piton trade this morning just to kind of get a little bit of a flavor for the momentum. I traded some Twilio puts. The software group has been pretty hot. There was a nice sizable Twilio put trade that went up, and I made some money off of that just for a quick scalp. I'm holding the last piece of it, but keep in mind the software group, it can have some decent pullbacks after nice runs, so be mindful of that. Last chart I'll show you guys is TLT. Look at TLT getting above value. I added a late trade in the bond ETF. All right, guys, we'll leave it there. Plenty to talk about tomorrow morning. Have a great night, and hope to see you in the trading room.